Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce you to my two interviewees for this session, a husband and wife duo. Together they run Institut auf dem Rosenberg, which is not just one of the world's leading schools, but a genuinely unique institution. I know, I've been there. It has developed its own method and tools for educating the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. It's quite unlike any other school you've probably been to. To discuss how they do what they do, please welcome Anita Gademann, Head of Innovation and member of the board at Institut auf dem Rosenberg, and her husband, Bernhard Gademann, President of the Institut auf dem Rosenberg. So, Bernhard, the school, Rosenberg, it's an extraordinary place. It's a collection of pointy-roofed buildings on the top of a hill outside this beautiful Swiss town of St. Gallen. It's an architectural mix. It's a beautiful place. It's also been owned and managed by your family. I think you're the fourth generation to do that. So you're not just the headmaster or the president or the director. There's a deeper connection than that. Can you tell us about your association with the school and kind of what that all means?
Sure, yeah, thank you very much. And I think it's actually a really good question as well, because neither Anita or myself have a traditional educational background in the field of schooling or education. And that has also been the tradition in my family. Is to say when you run and manage a school, you should approach it from a different perspective. Almost like, if you work in a different sector, leave the specialist work to the engineers. Now, in our case, this would be our artisans of education, our experts in the classroom. But given our diverse background, so, Anita worked in the financial service industry. She was a journalist for Dow Jones Newswire, for the Wall Street Journal. I worked here during our time in London for Thomson Reuters and other companies, has given us a completely different perspective, which we were then able to bring back into what, as you said, Edwin, is a very traditional family company, actually. But every generation in my family always managed to update, to bring a new contemporary outlook, because we understand we provide education for, what we say, the future leaders. So what does that mean? You cannot educate somebody today on the principles of 1900 something or even the year 2000. You need to constantly review as to the content that you're delivering, the way you're delivering education in the classroom, and you need to have a good understanding of where the world's going. Otherwise, you will not do the generation justice if you say this is the education that will make them successful.
Absolutely. And Anita, Bernhard mentioned there a phrase that might come up again, artisans of education. Can you just explain, this is sort of a trademark or a tagline that Rosenberg has developed because of the way that it thinks about what it does. Can you kind of unpack it a little bit for us?
Yes, of course. So artisans of education refer to the constant and continuous craft in educating the students today for the leaders of tomorrow. And why we call our teachers, our boarding tutors, our team artisans is because they have to be immensely adaptable. They have to have an immense quantity of care and respect for the work, and have to be very, very quick on their feet to change and help with whatever comes across them. We also are a very unique school because we do not offer a national system for education. So we offer all the international systems available. So we have the IB, we have the British A-levels and GCSEs, we have the APs, we have everything based on our own curriculum, which means every single teacher at Rosenberg must be able to teach all of this. There is no such specialization as in I'm a mathematics teacher to GCSE or A-level teacher. They have to be very versatile, which is why they're the artisans and not the teachers.
Fantastic. And yes, as you said, Bernhard, you both had careers in sort of finance, media, that kind of area. Lived in London for a time as well, so welcome back. And then I think you took over the running of the school in 2016, if I'm correct. Can you tell us sort of when you came in at that time, what your big goal was? Did you have a focus?
Yes, so we, as you said correctly, Edwin, we took over the operational management in 2016. I was involved as president of the board before that. But the real motivation to take over the operational management was, motivated by the idea that we want to create this ideal school that we had in mind of what education should be like. Of course, we thought about our children as well. We're then in kindergarten age, and we thought, wait a minute, if we are given this unique privilege, you have a school that is 130-something years old. We have the means and the possibilities and the understanding of what should happen. So we wouldn't want to settle for something that is average. And we thought, here's this unique opportunity to create something beautiful, a school that we would like to attend, a school that our friends would like to send their children to, and of course one that we would like to send our own kids to.
Which you do now, I understand.
Absolutely, yes.
So, the talk is backed up by action as well, which is fantastic. And a big part of what you've been trying to do has been to develop this proprietary platform that you have and a personalised program. I think that's integral to the offering of the school. Anita, you've been instrumental in that. Can you talk a bit about how it works and how it was developed?
Yes, so we have developed, this runs actually on two separate streams. Number one is student focus, that's your individual development plan, and that is a plan that is established for every single student when they enter our school, regardless of their age. They can be 6 years old, they can be 13, and we look at a student in a holistic way, seeing what they are good at, what they enjoy, what they like, where they can add value to society around them. And we try to boost that with the courses they pick, the sports they pick, the co-curriculars they pick. Now, the difficulty in traditional schools is that while teachers would like to pursue such a path, often what happens is they cannot timetable this and put this through into a child's life, which is the second step of our system, and that is a company that Bernhard and I established as well. It's a tech company that develops operating systems for schools that allow an AI-based generation of individual timetables for each student. So this is what we focus on, and this is how we ensure that our students have what they require through the journey at Rosenberg.
Fantastic. So, I mean, you require the teachers to deliver the education. They need to be versed in all these different exam boards and requirements and curricula. You need to make sure that the timetables mesh together, that actually children can go to the lessons and the teachers can teach them. And that's fantastically complicated as well. But you also need to understand what each student wants for any of that to have any meaning. Can you tell us about how you do that? How do you kind of talk to them? How do you discover what it is that they need and they want?
So I think it's a very interesting question, and I was very inspired by the longevity panel because everybody's thinking about living longer, and yet most of the society right now are completely unhappy in their jobs and their work, and they run away to their hobbies and spend more and more time on those hobbies. And this concept of 60% work time or 80% work time is so prominent. And it's a question that that we're constantly faced with. What we try to do is to create a student that knows what they're good at and what they enjoy. But I think one of the most important parts is the value add part. It's wonderful that you may like something, but if you're not great at it, you also will not be able to pursue this for a very long time or be successful in it, and therefore will lose interest. And the easiest way to actually enjoy something and to make it a success is to share it. So the moment you can create value for yourself, for those around you, be it in your classroom, be it in your year group, be it in your dining hall, in a school, in a city, this is the time when you realize, oh, this is actually something for me. And that's when you thrive, and that's when you stop going to work. You start going to fulfill a promise, a product, an aim for yourself. And what we do is, of course, we speak to our students. We know them. We know everything about them. We also have an amazing communication system, both personal and tech, of course, which means that all the stakeholders of our school, including the parents, the students, the teachers, the house tutors, the health team, that they all have full visibility, and therefore we just know much more about our student. I think
this is via an app that you have, I think, is it?
These are our apps. We have various apps for parents, for students. We have the system for our school. We have the only operating system that combines boarding, health, and academics in one system, I believe. And I would like to also say, because I'm sure all of you guys have children and all of you guys are unhappy with the schools your kids go to, because that's kind of natural for parents, that communication is key. And very often those teachers that teach the kids, they want the best for the kids. They just don't have the data and they don't know how to communicate with the parents, with the directors, with the heads of year groups. And this is where the pitfall of all schools happen, I think. I think it's that communication. I think the care is there. I think everybody wants to do well by the youth. We just have to communicate better, I think.
And I mean, the offering that you provide to your students, the degree of specialization, the close care that they're given is partly a function of the resources that the school has available. And we should sort of say that it's one of the highest fee charging schools in the world, and that is reflected in what the school is able to do for its students. And that is reflected in the student body, but also the parents that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about what you think students and their parents are looking for? What's your sort of client base, if we can be a bit mercenary about it?
Sure, with pleasure. As you said correctly, by the way, I think according to Spears Magazine, it is the most expensive school.
Yeah.
But
I think there might be a caveat in that story somewhere.
But truth be said, it's not important to us. We work hard to be the best school. And what does best even mean, right? That depends on your criteria, that depends on what you're interested in. Best in the sense of what we imagine, seeing where the world is going, an ever more complex society, of what is required to be successful in that environment. Now, that's the same thing that attracts our parents. And as you said correctly, there are, I would say, 99% probably entrepreneurs that send their children to us. And it's interesting because they're not really first and foremost looking for a boarding school environment. They're looking for an educational environment that meets their expectation of what teaching and learning should be about nowadays. And so they are motivated by, for example, having a school that nurtures entrepreneurial skills, a school that gives their children the opportunity to work on projects that come into real life, that looks at them as individuals. And just adding on from what Anita said, we have this very sophisticated data platform, but the artisanal aspect is, she didn't tell you that, but there are weekly, bi-weekly, actually meetings twice a week where you will have the heads of department just discussing students who are deviating from their potential grade, so where we think they should be, and it may not be for a reason, somebody's aiming for an A, why are they on a B+, they're really good in the subject, what's going on, could be, I don't know, boyfriend, girlfriend troubles, but it could also be because they all have international backgrounds, that this is something they have not previously covered in the curriculum. So that makes for a very artisanal approach, because then we really are able to look at each student individually. I think that's attractive to our parents. As I mentioned, they come from all over the world. And so the cool thing, and this is actually what makes this job really, really enjoyable for us, is that our parents very often give us a free hand. And I think because they also come from, I guess, a sphere of society that's very much beyond trying to prove something, or there's this fear of, decline in a financial way, that's gone. They expect excellence from their children, but they will give their children the freedom to pick what field that's in. You know, if you want to be a aeronautical engineer, don't present a physics grade B+, right? That is not consistent with what you said was your intention. And as Anita said, maybe that's not your passion then. Maybe you're not great at it. So they demand excellence, but they're very, very generous when it comes to choosing universities or other pathways. And so I think that describes them best. International, entrepreneurial background from first to, I don't know, 8th generation wealth, doesn't matter, and it creates this beautiful mix and this beautiful community that is so unique to Rosenberg.
Sure. And of course you provide all the traditional subjects, and as we've said, any curriculum or exam board one might be interested in, but you also are very keen to teach in a way that is in tune with that entrepreneurial spirit, and there are a few things that I saw on my visit to the school which kind of really chime with that. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Should I do that?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this teaching comes down to the actual artisan in the classroom. I think, again, one of the key components as well of our school are the small classes, so you can do a lot more with that. I think the way we assess students, the way we grade students is very brave, maybe. We obviously love that our students have amazing exam results. Of course, we love that they go to the universities they want to go to. It's all wonderful. But really what we want them to do is to be the best they can be, and we want them to produce. I think a key factor is the philosophy of our school is one of producers and not consumers. And I think this is what we try to encourage as much as possible. We value debate very highly. We value presentation skills very highly. We value different forms of assessments versus just your, dry kind of answer in 50 words. I don't know, present to me an essay plan. And of course, we do have our in-house talent enrichment program, which is something completely different than traditional education, because it is led by experts and industry experts. So while Rosenberg artisans are in the room, when this education takes place, we usually have lawyers and tech giants and engineers and coders, actual coders or hackers in that room with the students, so they can actually see what that sort of job would look like, what the industry looks like right now versus what is written in a textbook, and they get to experience. And we do this with students as young as 5, 6 years old, and they thrive on this, and they learn a lot, and it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I was privileged to sit in on a session where students were broken up into small groups, and they were all working on a project using what at that time was the cutting-edge AI tools available. It's ancient history now. It was probably a year ago or something. But you have been very eager to embrace AI, bring it into the classroom. You're not banning it. You're not saying it's not allowed. You're really going for it. Can you talk a bit about why you took that decision and how you've done it?
Shall I start and you'll finish?
I think you have the lead on this.
This is it's actually a very complicated topic, but it boils down to one very simple question. Why is that student in that chair? What is that student doing there? And I think when you talk about this whole cheating and plagiarism, and if your student does not know what they're doing in your classroom, and they do not know why they're learning and what they're learning, they will plagiarize and they will cheat. Not because they want to be bad, because they don't know how to perform what you want them to perform. I have never seen a student who used AI, wrote an essay using ChatGPT. This has never happened. What I have seen is students who tell me, I've done my research, I throw it into chat, that's what came out, and you know what, it doesn't sound like me, I don't like it. Yeah, I think this human agency is incredibly important, and we have to teach our students to understand and believe that their voice is important. The way they write is important. What they have to say is valuable. And the moment students understand this, there is no reason to ban anything. It's like saying we'd ban calculators in the 80s. We would be nowhere if we did that. So AI is very important, and we have to continue using it. Of course, we do also educate our students on the usability and the dangers of new tools. And maybe, Bernhard, you want to talk about the charter. because this is something I think maybe that you're referring to.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But I don't want to rob you from the opportunity to use it again, but you had a great line to me. There's something you're not producing. You said the other day. You said you weren't producing refrigerators. It's a bit more complicated than that. You're not allowed to just make a faulty refrigerator and take it back and give the customer a better one. You need to do this properly first time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a line we use actually very often when we speak to our artisans, and we even have this little handbook, and it says, this is our commitment to education. And then you hear Anita talking about new technologies, about being brave, and you probably know educational institutions are not inherently brave. They're the opposite. They're defensive, which is now also why there's a big debate, fear-based debate in our eyes, about AI and the usage. And as Edwin says, we say, we're not in the business of selling refrigerators. If I sell Edwin one and it malfunctions, I call him, I apologize, and we'll ship him a new unit. In education, we only have one chance, right? We're dealing with somebody's life. So when we say we experiment, that must be done under very safe conditions, and we need to ensure that we're successful every single time. Otherwise, we're committing a crime on that student and on that family. And just adding on to what Anita said about artificial intelligence and the usage, I think it really boils down to this. You need to embrace it. I think if we have a fear-based discussion saying, well, what is the use of education? I think the moment a machine can perform all these tasks a lot better than a human being, we have to ask ourselves whether what we are teaching as skills is still relevant. It is definitely worrisome because the rift between, the reality of professional life and education is certainly increasing massively, and that's why we took a completely different approach. We also learn a lot from our students, right? I mean, it's this generation that teaches us. But again, it takes guts as an artisan, as an educator, to stand in front of a class and say, well, I don't know the answer, I'll be your guide on this journey, and let's try and establish things together. A great example of this is an effort that our students grades 8th to 12th grade last fall engaged in, was a workshop where we got them industry experts, trend scouts, tech lawyers, and they came up with this idea using the input that they got to create a charter that should govern the use of artificial intelligence around the world, as in basic principles. How should you deal with deep fakes? What about the identification of AI actors, tools, and so on and so forth? And it was beautiful to see their work because they have a very strong opinion on this topic, and they also understand that it needs a global solution. Now, interestingly enough, here's this generation that understands so much about it. When you look at all the regulation efforts anywhere, in the UK, in the United States, in Europe, they're usually regionally limited, and they usually take not into consideration the most important factor when it comes from a human perspective, which are the people who will actually live and deal with on a daily basis, the youth today. And so I thought this was a great example of a proactive, brave approach by our artisans to allow the students to be able to go away, and the work they produce is outstanding.
Sure. And I mean, this all feeds into your slightly unusual take on education. Your feeling, I think, is that a lot of even very good schools, perhaps particularly good British schools, focus excessively on the exam. And of course, you spoke earlier, people have access to the teachers to take the exams that they want to take, and they're part of life. But you feel that when you look at other places, more traditional education backgrounds, there is that excessive focus on the exam, and it's to the detriment of the student.
Yes. Not just the British system or a specific school, all systems. I think if you, anybody who's over 40, like me in this room, if you think about what you have been taught when you were 6, 7, 8, 10, or where you were when you were 18, 19, the world was completely different. When we were going to high school, there was no internet, widely available internet. There were certainly no smartphones, very, very different world. The education system has not changed, and not since you were kids, since your parents were kids. I mean, this is just wrong. There's nothing that a classroom will teach you today that will serve you in the future. The only thing you learn in the traditional school is how to learn from a book. That is the only thing. And I know this sounds very controversial, but I firmly, firmly believe this. I think, again, our kids have top A-level grades, top, GCC grades. My kids are not first language English speakers. They're all foreign language speakers. They all have about 10 to 12 weeks, fewer weeks of school than British kids. And we beat any private statistics year on year. Not because they study so much more, or they take fewer A-levels. Most of our kids take more than 4 A-levels. It's because of the way they learn. It's because of the fact that they can pick their subjects, that they can be super passionate about them, that they can study the subjects at the time when they're ready to study the subjects. They don't have to wait for grade 11 to take an A-level. If they can take an A-level in grade 9, they should take it. But we take that stance because of our wonderful parents who are brave, entrepreneurial, and who say it is much more important that my child learns at the level they are at than that my child finishes with 4 or 5 A-levels in the 12th grade because Oxford University wants that. And I think any national system will remain so because reform is so difficult and slow, but I think as parents, everybody has a choice of what happens to their children and how they educate their children. And I would say spend as little time as possible in national schools and make sure your children have very, very meaningful activities after school because they will learn more from it.
Great, thank you. We've got a good number of questions coming through on Slido now. That's sli.do.com if you'd like to pose a question, but we have got some coming through, which we'll get to in a moment. I just want to bring us back now to the students, because my assumption, I have to be honest, was that decisions about sending a child to the school were largely taken by the parents. But you were saying, and I believe you, that actually it's increasingly driven by the kids themselves. Can you talk about how that works and how they make their decisions, how they're kind of building this picture of your school and kind of choosing you?
Sure. Yes, it is exactly like you say, something that we've observed over the past decade, and I would say trend increasing, is that students themselves in the admission interviews or the parents when they first introduce themselves say, for example, my daughter's come across your school, she's heard about it from friends, or she's seen it somewhere in the media or social media, and it is actually her intent. She made us aware of it, and she said it's my dream, and spoke to the parents, asking them to help her apply and to get into the school, which is really interesting to see. It's a great thing to observe in general because we are looking for students who are self-motivated, and I think when you don't need to be 18 or 20 years old, as Anita says, in order to take a stance in your life. You can develop a vision for your own future well before that. And so that is becoming more and more important. We never had, but we also don't, we never had the parent that said, well, it's tradition in our family, everyone's going to a boarding school since 8 generations, something like this. It's not something we observe, and mostly they're really looking for the type of education, the environment, the community, and the boarding school aspect is something that is complementary to them.
Sure. And once a child and their parent decides that Rosenberg might be the school for them or one of the schools for them, what does the process look like? Is there a long waiting list? Is there an entrance exam? How does that application work?
So there is a process which starts with the application, and then candidates who are successful at this will undergo interviews, testing, and this links back to what you said earlier. We're also looking for their intrinsic motivation. We've never admitted a child. Sometimes our interviewers, our admissions officers, having interviews, and a child hints at, oh, this is not my dream, and really I'd love to stay at home, but it's my father's and my mother's idea. That's something we always shy away from because it's just so important that it is them who want it. Because, freedom of choice is one of the most important things in life. That can be applied pretty much to anything, even succession management. And I think in a family office space, that is an important aspect to consider. It needs to be an individual's choice to do something. And the moment you choose consciously something for yourself, there's no one else to blame. There's, there's only you, yourself, and your responsibility to go forward. So that's what we're looking for. Yeah, it's beautiful to see how young adults can be so motivated at this age.
Can I just add something here? Because I just thought of something that Anastasia actually said in the longevity panel. I think it is very important to us to listen to the children. They are very smart. They know a lot more than we know. I think they have to have a voice. We have to give them a voice. And I think it's interesting that when Anastasia said when she sold her business, so then what happens? You know, what happens to your life? Your whole purpose is gone, your goal is gone, your routines are gone, your social contacts are gone. And I think when our students come into our school, what we try to do with them is we teach them hard work, but we always say, so what's next? And I think this is also so important because they know what's next. You just have to let them speak. Oh, now you've done this exam, so what's next? Now you've won this Olympiad, so what's next? Because there's always what's next. Our lives are not one big career spanning over 60 years. We will all have multiple careers, and our kids will have a different career every 5 to 10 years. So they have to have the stamina and the breadth and the knowledge and the adaptability to go with the times and change.
And it's an extraordinarily international mix. I think you teach in up to 47 languages or something like that. Is that correct? How many nationalities in the school?
More than 50 nationalities.
Yeah.
More than 50
More than
nationalities.
50 nationalities. I will not put my name down on languages, but we will offer any language you want.
57 nationalities,
57.
yeah.
Thank you for the fact check in the front row. These are children of entrepreneurial parents, in many cases extremely wealthy, and so the student body is quite unique. It's a quite unique mixture of people. It would be easy for people from that background to coalesce and for a quite difficult culture to emerge from that, I think, but you take very active steps to sort of shape the environment and to talk about privilege in a certain way. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think this is a very good question. Thank you. Because you would assume if you pool students from such privileged backgrounds, you may create a show-off culture or a culture whereby the students live in a bubble and have no understanding of what the real world looks like. And it's interesting because I think there's two factors to it. Number one is it's all about the culture that we create in the school. Our parents are entrepreneurs, and we have an entrepreneurial stance. So we don't celebrate anybody's background. As Manuel here will confirm, very often Anita and I will not know what exactly a family background is of somebody or somebody's title or achievement because it's unimportant to us. We focus on the students themselves. We also make sure that what is celebrated in the school is the achievement of the student. And we have a strong culture of kindness, mutual respect. One of our principles as Artisans of Education is, for example, we hold open the doors for our students. We'll inquire about their well-being. We aspire to know all their names. We help them carry things. And it's interesting because when we have a new intake in September, within a few days, all those new students start imitating exactly this behavior. So it's actually, I wouldn't say they're humble because our students know their worth, and they're certainly ambitious. They're certainly respectful, and which leads me to the second factor. I think we're speaking to a part of society that doesn't have to prove anything anymore, right? So if everyone in this room is successful, or anybody in this room has, wealthy parents, what is the point of me trying to impress you with, the holiday destination I've been to, or whatever means of transfer or transport we had? And we know that this is not the case. So there's no, designer bag culture or anything like that. Would you agree, Anita?
Definitely. I think I think our students very much know their worth. I think they have their agency. I think they know what they can change, what they can do. And I think if you have to fall back to what your parents do as your, source of self-esteem or unique selling point, then you're doing something wrong. And I think if your kids, think that they're going to be great because they're wearing those sneakers, then there's something wrong there. And I think it's important to to show this via all channels at school, not just telling students, because they usually don't learn when we tell them. We have to usually model this behavior for them, for this to take on.
But I suppose at the same time, with any group of young people, there are going to be challenges and difficulties, and perhaps there are ways in which they're more acute because of your students' backgrounds and the wealth that's involved. What are the sort of trickiest situations that come up for you to manage, and how do you deal with those?
So I have a couple. I don't know if I can maybe start. One of my trickiest, the issues that I face every year in September is what the students arrive with. And I think particularly because they're so international, because of the different cultures and because of the different school systems, it is unbelievable to me how different the curricula, the expectations are. For instance, Central Europe is amazing at teaching kids that half is enough. You know, if you know 50%, you're fine. So it's, you know, you see report cards and the grades are okay, and then the students arrive and you realize, oh my gosh, they know no maths. Well, because they know half of it only, you know, which means they're missing half of it. So that's a huge, huge challenge that we have to fix very, very quickly, very early. And we try to fix it very intensively so the kids can actually start going to school. The other one, I don't know if Bernhard, you want to touch on it, I would say discipline. Thank God there are no students in this room. I think the parents will appreciate this. We're a very high discipline school. So that's, I think, something that our students sometimes struggle with as well.
I agree. I think it takes some time to get used to. Maybe I would like to add one more thing that is a challenge. Traditional schools, you know, whether on, you know, with intent or not, have a tendency to kill creativity, to take away any kind of inherent natural interest in subjects by just, you know, I would say academicizing them, and teaching the curriculum is basically the exam spec. And so it takes a while to bring back that natural interest, and it takes a while to encourage them to, for example, in a classroom, to, you know, say something that comes spontaneously to their mind. You know, if you think about entrepreneurship, some of the best ideas are the craziest ideas. But traditional school will teach students today that unless you know the correct answer, shut up, because you're going to ridicule yourself, or you're going to get a minus grade, or anything like this, and just to basically encourage them to share their thoughts, to think creatively, to offer an alternative point of view in a respectful way to what they may be being taught at the moment. I think that's what takes a while to change that culture, and to really then get them into the zone where they can learn, produce, and be successful.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, I'm going to come to some questions from the audience here and work our way through. Your approach is very exclusive, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, in this question. And it's an expensive model to run. Is there any way you would encourage this in the wider academic landscape, or I suppose are there things that the wider academic landscape can sort of glean from your approach?
So we are actively trying to do that, Bernhard and I. I think maybe you will hear about this more in the future. We are actively trying to and export the Rosenberg system in some way to a wider audience in Switzerland for now, because we fully agree. Yes, it's a very unique approach. It's wonderful, but really every single student on this planet should have this approach. I think on a parental level, what I have said earlier, maybe can just add to this, do more with your kids. Do more with your kids. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be, you know, super private. Whether you're doing it in museums, whether you're doing it in language schools, whether you are taking your children to your local factory that's next to your house, or a farmer, to talk about how they work, do this. Make sure that your kids see the world outside via the academic language they learn at school, you know, so they understand what it is they're learning. And you can do this as parents, you can do this as communities. But yes, I hope to be able to export more of Rosenberg to a wider audience in the future.
Good. And there's one here. It's a two-part question. We'll start with the first part and then come to the second part afterwards. What happens when your students suffer from mental health issues? And then in brackets, these can particularly affect the children of wealthy families.
So I'm not sure if it particularly affects the children of wealthy families. I think this is a general trend that has been observed after, or maybe even accelerated with the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, I think it links in a little bit to what I said earlier. I think a lot of this is related to what was also mentioned on the earlier panel. The first defense is your physical health, is your routine, is your feeling of achievement, is your feeling of purpose. Now, you can have all of these things and you can still suffer from mental health issues. The way we're trying to approach it is, you know, in such cases, is to provide guidance, support. But there is a limit to what schools can do in this sphere. It is important to also hand this to professionals and also to leave it well within the responsibility of the family, because the families, I think, still form the most important part shaping a student's happiness, a young person's outlook on life. So I think that it is key to find that point where you hand this back to the family, working together with them for the best success.
Can I add something? Because I know where this question comes from, because obviously I read the news. I want to say that we do not have one student in our school that suffers from depression. I don't think we have one student in our school that is actively under psychological care for mental health. Not one. We have psychologists at school. They are experts who come into school to deal with whatever a student would like to deal with. One of the psychologists is actually a personal trainer, so she deals with more kind of anger management, getting this energy out of a teenager if that's what a teenager wants. But why I'm saying this is because I think what's really, really important is to remember that the mental health issues that are now plaguing teenagers, 90% of them come down to social media. You take your phones off your kids, they will not have that. The difference in a boarding school is that the kids don't have to be on social media. They meet in the cafeteria, they meet in the corridor, they meet playing football, they meet in the art room. And I think my kids are less on their phones, as in my students, and in front of screens. And I think this is a huge benefit to them. They spend time outside, they spend time together. I think a lot of what is written right now in the press has to do with social media. That I think, as parents, you're in the driving seat. Get your kids off social media, en masse.
Okay, easy. Okay, just less than 3 minutes left and 3 excellent questions I want to get through. So, fairly quickly, you've discussed the value in giving children choice. Is there an issue with giving students too much choice? Should they ever be told what to do, told in inverted commas?
You have to give qualified choice. Sorry, Bernhard. You have to give qualified choice. So what you cannot do is you cannot tell a student, oh, you know, you can do whatever you want, and then say, oh, wait, but you can't do that because you don't have the ability. It's like giving a small child the choice of what to wear. You know, you go to your 2-year-old, you don't say, what do you want to wear today? Middle of winter, they'll say a bathing suit, right? You have to say it's this dress or this dress. That's the choice. So yes, definitely choice, but qualified for them.
Excellent. Yeah, I can only add on to this. I think it also within, you know, the family's expectations. A couple of years ago, a student graduated, and he was the son of an entrepreneur who had also attended Rosenberg and was very successful in the field of oil and gas industry. And he wanted his son to study business at university, and that was his most important thing. And the son didn't really want to study business, he wanted to become an artist. It's a classic, right? And so we tried to mediate a little bit between the two things, and he said, Bernhard, you misunderstand. He can become a cheesemaker for all I care, and I will finance that cheesemaking venture. But my expectation is for him to have this basic foundation in education. And you know, I think that is not too much of an ask. And I also spoke to his son and I said, I don't think your father is asking you too much. He's given you all this. It is 4 years of your life. You can do as much art as you want. You know, many universities, they're not so intensive. So you can develop all your passions. And you say he'll support you with everything, but he's asking you for something basic in return. I think we also need to find that balance. I think that's important.
Fantastic. We're just about to run out of time, but two very quick questions. Many British schools, sort of well-known British schools, are opening branches in countries such as China and the UAE and elsewhere. Would Rosenberg ever expand? Could there be a Rosenberg Dubai one day?
No, but the reason is this: it's back to the refrigerators. I think, you know, whereas Anita and I, you know, we rely on an amazing team of leaders, which has allowed us to, you know, step into the world of tech and then to work with our own investment firm as well to develop that. And we don't want to micromanage people, and yet it is really important, this truly unique culture and something that we provide. We don't think you can copy it, and I think we wouldn't be doing ourselves or clients around the world justice if we would do so. That said, of course, you know, there's, you know, hardly a week without an invitation to do so.
Fantastic. And final question, is there one thing that top British schools could take from your approach at Rosenberg?
Yes, to be braver and not to worry so much about exam scores and not to worry so much about stuff that was important 500 years ago. I mean, you know, we're full of admiration for this beautiful tradition. Boarding schools in Switzerland wouldn't exist without British boarding schools, as many other things around the world. Just because something was amazing in 1756 doesn't mean it's amazing today. And I think you should cherish your tradition. You should continue to cultivate perpetual values, but at the same time, when you understand that you're no longer delivering relevant stuff, it's time to turn a page and to look forward.
I would say, because I am the enfant terrible of our school, I would say kill the hierarchy. Get the experts in, kill the hierarchy.
Very good. Well, that's all we have time for in this session. In just a moment, we'll have a half-an-hour coffee break, and after that, we'll be back with my colleague, Alec Marshall, will be looking at the death of the non-dom regime as we know it. But for now, Anita and Bernhard Gademann of Institut auf dem Rosenberg, thank you so much for being with us.